Now, I also thought of another thing when I read the encyclical, and that is this. When John Paul II, in March of 2000, came into St. Peter's Basilica, and he made an unbelievable statement. He said,
"Yeah, the Pope says lots of stuff that I find hard to believe.
I want to ask forgiveness for the actions of those Christians who have committed evil in the name of religion." Amazing. And then I would say the deputy of doctrine at the time, Cardinal Ratzinger, becomes Pope, and he writes this encyclical, and he says, you know what? Christians, or religion, true religion, does not have a monopoly on fanaticism. And he takes us back to the horrendous activities of the last century, of the 20th century. And he said, in the name of atheism, Hitler, Stalin, Mao committed what unbelievable atrocities, we could say 100 million at least.
And that is why you shouldn't believe the stuff the Pope tells you.
Arbitrary killings of the innocent human beings. We compare that to, for example, the Spanish Inquisition, for which, at least in part, the Pope was asking forgiveness. We could say maybe 5,000 and 10,000 horrific acts as well, no doubt, of forcing religion. But the Pope is saying, if religion does not in any way have a monopoly on fanaticism, you and I, Mr. Dawkins, need to stand together. And we need to say terrible things have been done as well in the name of atheism. I think that's the point of bringing in, I would say, of Pope Benedict, the likes of Mr. Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and he does it really reaching out to a hand, not to condemn, but to invite for real dialogue.
All right, let's get Richard Dawkins' response to that.
Terrible things were done by the Spanish Inquisition in the name of religion. Terrible things were done by Hitler, not in the name of atheism. Terrible things were done by Stalin, not in the name of atheism. Stalin happened to be an atheist. Hitler happened to be a Roman Catholic. Neither of them did their terrible deeds in the name of either atheism or religion. They did their terrible deeds in the name of other doctrines. The Spanish Inquisition did its terrible deeds in the name of religion.
So, sure, let me respond to that, if that's okay, Mike. Let me just say, I don't think the people who are watching, Professor Dawkins, really believe you.
This guy is at the Vatican making these statements, repeating what the Pope himself has said. I've heard lots of people make this incredibly stupid remark, but I always thought they were just the complete ignorant backwoods idiots that didn't know shit from Shinola. I really didn't think somebody who is apparently reasonably educated would believe this kind of crap. And he's got the gall to say, I don't think people are believing Dawkins.
At least those who are historians. Now, I know you're not a historian. You're a scientist, but you're stepping out of your venue, I would say.
Are you telling me?
That. Let me say this, Mr. Dawkins. Let me just finish real quickly. That Hitler and Stalin, what they did, they were trying to create religion-free utopia. And they had very much a vested interest in not just creating a utopia of secular humanism, but a humanism that is completely void of those who would claim the existence of God. If you'd like to get into that as well, which I know is philosophy and theology, which is not your venue either, I'd be happy to do so. Of those who would claim the existence of God. If you'd like to get into that as well, which I know is philosophy and theology, which is not your venue either, I'd be happy to do so.
It is very different to happen to be an atheist and to do things in the name of atheism. I don't believe that anybody has done terrible deeds in the name of atheism. Why would they? What would be the point? Stalin did terrible deeds in the name of a communist utopia. Hitler did terrible deeds in the name of a racist utopia. Dystopia, one should say. Neither of them were representing atheism. Atheism is not responsible for anything that they do. Religion was responsible for what the Spanish Inquisition did, not modern religious people, but religious people at the time.
Right. Father Morris in Rome,
yes.
Stay with us just for a moment. I want to bring in Trish Devine calling from France. What would you like to say on this particular issue, on the encyclical issue by the Pope to do with atheism and how it plays into this debate?
Well, I do think he's speaking utter nonsense. I absolutely agree with Professor Dawkins. It's not as if atheism itself is actually a movement. Atheists don't believe in God the way they don't believe in many other things, like the Loch Ness Monster. But we don't have a name for people who don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster. Stalin indeed was an atheist, but Hitler was a Catholic. And most of the Nazis who carried out those terrible deeds under the National Socialist program were themselves practicing Christians. I also believe that because Hitler was brought up in a Christian background, this is one of the reasons that he hated Jews so much, because this was always part of the Church's teaching.
So what would you say then, Trish Devine, about, if you like, religion's influence in the world?
I think religions can be influential for good, but they can also be very influential for bad. And only today, in today's Observer, we have a story about evangelical Christianity causing people in Nigeria to attack their children as witches.
Let's go back to you then, Father Morris, in Rome.
Sure,
Richard Dawkins,
sure.
Not alone in his arguments.
Right, not alone, exactly. You know what's great about Catholic doctrine and Christian doctrine as well, I would say in general,
No, I don't.
is we can go back and find out what did the founder of Christianity say? And what do the leaders right now of Christianity say about violence in the name of religion? In true religion, and here I don't stand up for all religions, there's plenty of religions I wouldn't want my little sister to be involved in.
I wouldn't leave your little sister with a Catholic priest.
But in true religion, we can go back and say, what does Jesus Christ say about violence in his name? He was the Prince of Peace. What does the Pope Benedict XVI, what's in Martin Luther King? And then let me just say, to call Hitler, to call Stalin practicing Christians is absolutely ridiculous.
Nobody said that Stalin was a Christian.
You don't wipe out something that you adhere to. It's just not intellectually honest.
Intellectual honesty. Now there's a subject you ought to study.